How far can human endurance go when steel and fire become the only language on the battlefield? What looked like an unstoppable assault was, in truth, walking into a silent trapper, one measured not in minutes but in minds. Every inch of the field had been mapped, every path calculated by men who understood that patience could be deadlier than artillery. And as the formation advanced, the cold morning light revealed not chaos but design, the geometry of war drawn by invisible hands. In an era ruled by precision and machines, victory no longer belongs to the strongest, but to the most disciplined eye, the ones who listen to the silence between explosions. This is not just a story about tanks and shells, it is about the intelligence behind these modern military equipment and the quiet courage of those who command them. The first tremor came at 6:30. A low, distant thud that rolled across the flatlands like thunder crawling beneath the soil. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the horizon erupted. A wave of orange and black surged upward as dozens of anti-tank mines, buried deep and layered in silence, detonated together. Racks were ripped apart, turrets spun into the air like broken crowns. The great armored spearhead halted mid-charge, trapped by an invisible geometry of death. Colonel Javelin's plan had taken weeks to set. 3 layers of mines, each disguised beneath false safe lanes. Between them, concealed gun pits and artillery markers. When the enemy commander thought he saw a clear path, he had already lost it. In the bunker below, the colonel's voice was steady. "Hold fire. Let them bleed." Confusion. Through the periscope cameras, operators watched chaos unfold. Some tanks tried to reverse, only to collide with burning wrecks. Others, caught in narrow gullies, churned the earth helplessly while shells from above began to fall. From the ridgelines, these modern military equipment sang howitzers, guided shells, digital fire controls roared to life. Precision and patience became a single rhythm. Shell after shell screamed across the sky, each one finding its mark. The sound was apocalyptic, yet strangely deliberate. The morning sun vanished behind columns of smoke that twisted like black flags. Each explosion rolled into the next, until the field no longer had direction, only motion. Inside the bunker, a young artillery officer crossed himself quietly before firing again. "For the ones behind us," he whispered. "Dare!" By 7:15, the battlefield had become a mosaic of craters and flames. The once proud mechanized column, so meticulously arranged, was now a landscape of burning silhouettes. Amid the rising heat, a single phrase echoed through the command. "Channel, cold, restrained, victorious. Phase 2 prepare counter-armor engagement." And with that order, the war machine of discipline began to move. From the northern slope, the second phase began. The fog, once an ally to the invaders, now cloaked their undoing. At 7:40, the sky fractured with light. From hidden emplacements, a chorus of guns awoke. M777 howitzers and Bogdana self-propelled systems, their barrels glinting briefly before recoiling in harmony. Each firing table had been rehearsed for days. No guesswork, no improvisation, only precision. The shells climb high, their trails vanishing into the pale dawn before falling back to earth like judgment. They struck with the rhythm of a heartbeat, tying, steady, merciless, inevitable. Every impact was a punctuation mark in a sentence written by the calm intellect of Colonel Javelin's staff. Smoke rolled across the valley, swirling into pillars of ash. The sound was not chaos, it was orchestration. In the bunker, a young gunner named Serhiy adjusted his headphones, voice trembling but clear. "Target 2 destroyed. Adjusting elevation 6 mils left. Ready for correction." His commander nodded, eyes fixed on the digital map glowing blue and red. "Good work. Keep the bait." They were musicians of war, and the artillery their instrument. Above them, reconnaissance UAVs relayed live imagery, each crater a note of confirmation. The colonel's philosophy was simple: to outthink is to outfight. Machines could carry fire, but only the human mind could choreograph its dance. Outside, the distant enemy tried to form a counter-battery. Yet every time a muzzle flash appeared, a precise counter-strike silenced it within seconds. These modern military equipment, the colonel murmured, are only as strong as the minds commanding them. He looked across the map icons, blinking where batteries completed their firing cycles, shifting like chess pieces across the grid of Donetsk. To him, this was not slaughter, it was geometry. By 8 o'clock, the assault's rhythm had slowed. What had been an oncoming storm was now a disjointed procession of crippled machines. Some crews abandoned their vehicles and ran. Others stayed inside, trapped between duty and fear, waiting for the next shell to decide their fate. And then, as if in response to mercy, the guns fell silent. For a brief moment, the battlefield held its breath. No engines, no explosions, only the wind whispering through scorched metal. In that silence, Javelin finally spoke over the radio. Phase 3 Zhao, release the counter-strike. Let them see the cost of their arrogance. Beneath his calm tone was not triumph, but exhaustion. He knew what was coming next would be close, brutal, and human. The thunder of artillery had ended. The clash of iron was about to begin. The silence shattered at 8:15. From the ridgelines east of the valley, engines came alive, low, guttural, relentless. The ground trembled once more, but this time the rhythm belonged to Ukraine. Dozens of T-64 and Oplot T-84 tanks rolled forward, their hulls streaked with soot, their crews hardened by nights of waiting. The dawn light struck the gun barrels, and for a fleeting moment it looked as though the sun itself had risen from the steel. In the command channel, Javelin's voice was composed yet sharp. All call signs. Advance by sectors. Do not chase, contain and constrict. It was not a charge. It was surgery. Across the valley, Russian armored remnants tried to regroup, their vehicles pivoting desperately, engines howling. But the terrain is scarred with craters and burning wrecks. Sea was now the enemy's own trap. Every retreat route was a funnel. Every turn revealed another waiting gun. The Ukrainian tanks moved in, coordinated bursts, 3 forward, 2 covering, leapfrogging like hunters stalking prey. Inside Victor 3, Sergeant Lysenko steadied his crew. Target at 10 o'clock, range 900, he said. The gunner's voice came calm, almost reverent. On the mark. The 105mm cannon roared. A plume of smoke erupted from the target tank, its turret catapulted skyward in a slow, grotesque arc. They're folding, Lysenko murmured, watching the enemy's formation break apart. But he didn't celebrate. No one did. Each kill felt like a necessary act, not a victory. Through the shifting smoke, figures appeared as an infantry following behind the tanks, securing trenches and capturing crews dazed by the bombardment. In the chaos, the coordination was almost unnatural, each platoon moving like an organ within a living body. Even these modern military equipment, despite their sensors and rangefinders, seemed secondary to the instincts of the men who commanded them. Machines obeyed orders. Men felt timing. By 8:40, the valley was a crucible of flame and echo. The Ukrainian iron circle tightened, closing the noose around what remained of the assault spearhead. Enemy counterfire cracked against the Oplot's reactive armor, leaving scars but no breaches. Each hit was answered twice over, once by shell, once by maneuver. In the forward observation post, Javelin watched the unfolding pattern on his tactical map. The red icons that had once surged across his screen now flickered, dimmed, and vanished, one by one. He exhaled quietly and whispered, almost to himself, "Discipline defeats numbers." As the last echoes of cannon fire faded, a single thought crossed every soldier's mind: no machine, no doctrine, no empire can outlast the resolve of those who stand their ground. The wolves had circled. And their hunt was complete. The valley burned like a forge, but beneath its scorched surface, a second army waited. At 8:55, hidden hatches opened quietly, almost politely amid the ruin. From tunnels carved through old drainage lines and abandoned bunkers, small figures emerged. They wore no insignia, only dark uniforms smeared with oil and ash. Their eyes glowed faintly behind dusted goggles. They were the shadows of Javelinos designated special forces trained to move through the earth itself. No one spoke. Communication was reduced to gestures and glances. Each man carried a compact rucksack of shaped charges, magnetic mines, and a handheld controller for FPV drones. Light as a bird, deadly as a thought. They slipped between the burning husks of enemy armor, their movements fluid, almost ghostly. A sergeant halted at a wrecked T-90, still smoldering. He reached up, pressed a mine to the hull, and twisted the safety cap. A faint clicking, the mechanical heartbeat of execution. Within seconds, the vehicle bloomed into a fireball, scattering metal fragments like petals. Further ahead, two operators crouched beside a trench filled with disoriented Russian infantry. They launched their FPV drones straight from the dirt. The cameras came alive, transmitting the world through spinning static and smoke. From the perspective of the drones, the battlefield looked unreal, shattered geometry and flickering fire. Each drone found its mark: command vehicles, radio trucks, ammunition carriers. They struck with mathematical precision, the explosions blooming in rhythm, cutting the enemy's nervous system thread by thread. Up above, the Ukrainian frontline observers saw the chaos unfold on live feeds. "They've lost comms," one whispered. "No coordination left." Inside the bunker, Javelin watched the screens flicker as enemy icons vanished in waves. "The field is blind," he said softly. "Now we take its heart." Back on the surface, the special forces advanced through the smoke, finishing what the artillery had begun. Some moved with grim efficiency, others paused briefly beside fallen comrades or wrecked machines. One soldier knelt, rushing soot from the Ukrainian flag painted faintly on a steel plate. For a moment, amid the carnage, there was reverence. By 9:15, their mission was complete. The valley that had once echoed with diesel thunder was silent except for the crackle of fire. The men disappeared once more into the tunnels, swallowed by the earth that had birthed them. When the dust settled, all that remained were broken vehicles, twisted turrets, and the echo of invisible footsteps. The world would later call it the impossible ambush. But to those who fought there, it was simply discipline meeting destiny. Men and machines moving as one, until nothing remained but the truth of survival. By 9:30, the valley was no longer a battlefield, it was a furnace. The once mighty formation, 72 tanks, dozens of armored carriers, hundreds of men, had dissolved into smoke and twisted metal. The assault that was meant to break through Donetsk's northern defense now lay shattered, its remains glowing faintly beneath the rising sun. Colonel Javelin stood inside the bunker's command post, eyes locked on the map. Where red once pulsed with aggression, there was now only grey silence. He spoke quietly, more to himself than to the operators around him. "Order the cleanup. Bring them home." Outside, the iron spear of the enemy had broken upon the patience of the prepared. The counterattack wings, T-64s and oplots still moving through smoke, began closing pockets of resistance. Each engagement was brief, and surgical eyes short bursts of fire, a white flag raised, a silence returning. Special forces swept trenches, clearing bunkers one by one with grenades and muffled commands. Through the haze, an abandoned BMP-3 lurched forward, aflame, its tracks half melted. From behind a ridge, a lone soldier shouldered his RPG and fired. The projectile hit true, turning the vehicle into a brief, furious star against the pale morning sky. Moments later, the surviving crew staggered out, hands raised, their faces coated in ash and disbelief. At the field's center, a captured Russian commander knelt beside his overturned tank, his headset still connected, broadcasting static. The interpreter turned to Javelinos liaison. He says, he did not believe the mines were real. They always believe too late, the liaison replied. The air was thick with the scent of burnt fuel and soil. Reporters would later call it a graveyard of steel. But for those who stood there, it was something deeper, a cemetery of confidence where arrogance was buried alongside machinery. By 10 o'clock, the guns fell silent. The hum of engines gave way to the softer sounds of repair crews, medics, and wind brushing over scorched grass. A soldier picked up a twisted piece of metal and turned it in his hands. It had once been part of a turret and now unrecognizable. He placed it gently on the ground, as if returning it to the earth. In the command network, one last transmission echoed, enemy neutralized. Sector secure, awaiting further orders. No one cheered, no one shouted victory. War, they had learned, was not a song of triumph, but a whisper of endurance. The iron spear had collapsed, not under brute strength, but under the invisible weight of intelligence, patience, and resolve. As the smoke drifted east, the sky cleared to a fragile blue. The morning light returned to Donetsk, calm, indifferent, eternal. The news reached command before noon. The assault had collapsed in Donetsk. But war does not pause to mourn. Less than 20 hours later, the dawn over Cherniv, in northern Ukraine, burned a different color. The sky was torn apart by a single rising arc, white, searing, terrible. An Iskander-M tactical ballistic missile had been launched. Its flight was brief, its intent unmistakable. From the forests near the border, witnesses saw a spear of flame carve across the horizon, leaving a silver contrail that lingered like a scar. Minutes later, the earth shuddered. The missile slammed into a UAV assembly zone, a field of tents, vehicles, and cranes where technicians had been loading long-range AN-96 Ludi drones for redeployment. The explosion arrived like a second sunrise. A sphere of fire rolled outward, engulfing trucks, storage shelters, and aircraft fuselages. The shock wave traveled for kilometers, flattening everything that had survived the first flash. Overhead, Javelin 2 loitering drones circled, their cameras feeding the destruction live to command rooms far away. Within moments, one drone dubbed its engine whining like a falling scream and struck a convoy of resupply trucks. A chain of detonations followed, lighting the plane with a rhythm too cruel to be random. From the Russian perspective, it was retribution as swift, calculated, surgical. From the Ukrainian side, it was tragedy and disbelief. Each plume of smoke marked not just equipment lost, but men and memory. The fire consumed both steel and story. At the Cherniv forward post, Major Serhidenko watched from a trench, his face illuminated by the glow. He had no words, only the steady hum of the earth under bombardment. He whispered, not to anyone. So this is how the sky answers. By 8:30, the field had turned into a blazing grid. Reports confirmed 20 trucks destroyed, over 100 UAVs lost, and dozens of technicians unaccounted for. For every precision strike at Donetsk, an echo now replied from the north, a cruel balance sheet written in fire. Satellite images later showed the same pattern on both fronts, concentric rings of impact, smoke columns rising in measured alignment. Strategy mirrored strategy. Pain mirrored pain. At 10 o'clock, one final missile arced through the morning air, descending with the grace of inevitability. When it struck, the shockwave rolled through the trees, bending them all in the same direction, sound toward the past. From Donetsk to Cherniv, the war had folded upon itself, a single breath exhaled by two exhausted nations. The lesson was merciless but clear. In modern warfare, no weapon is invincible and no victory is absolute. Every success casts a shadow, and in that shadow waits the next dawn of steel. When the fire finally dimmed, silence took its place. Not peace only, silence. From Donetsk to Chalnev, the battlefields lay motionless beneath the fading smoke, each crater a small monument to the price of certainty. Men had fought, machines had spoken, and when both grew quiet, the wind returned to sing over the ashes. Colonel Javelin stood at the edge of what had once been the command line. The valley before him was unrecognizable, a mosaic of iron and sorrow. A reporter asked him, was it worth it? He did not answer. He only looked at the twisted wreck of a tank and said softly, "That question belongs to the living." In this century, military equipment has become more than hardware. It is thought, faith, and fear cast into metal. It carries the weight of those who build it, the hope of those who wield it, and the grief of those who stand against it. Every piece of military equipment tells a human story, a reminder that innovation without compassion becomes nothing but precision in tragedy. As nations race for supremacy, it is easy to forget that every advancement is a reflection of ourselves. These machines are our mirrors, cold, exact, and obedient. But behind every sensor and circuit lies a heartbeat, guiding, commanding, regretting. We create them to defend life, yet they often return to remind us how fragile life truly is. The colonel turned once more to the horizon where the light of dawn was breaking anew. He whispered to his aide, "Steel may win battles. Humanity wins wars." Then he walked away, his shadow stretching long across the broken ground. The camera lingered on the quiet field, a graveyard of lessons carved in metal. And as the narration faded, the voiceover spoke one final time. Peace is not the absence of war. It is the courage to outgrow it. So, if this story moves you, let it not be just a memory of destruction, but a call to reflection. Like, share, and speak for pieces, because behind every military equipment, there once was a human dream. Dawn over Donetsk was not gentle. The mist clung to the ground like breath held too long, trembling as dozens of diesel hearts began to roar beneath it. The soil shivered, stones rattled, and somewhere beyond the haze, engines merged into a single metallic growl, a rising tide of iron and dust.